Marcus Chun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the transport shuttle onto the crystal platform of Zephyria Prime. The gravity here was lighter than Earth's, making his usually heavy steps feel almost bouncy. Around him, dozens of other species moved with fluid grace through the spaceport, their movements elegant and purposeful. Marcus felt like a lumbering giant among dancers. The Galactic Cultural Exchange Program had selected him as Earth's representative for the Grand Celebration of Unity, a festival held every solar cycle to honor the diverse cultures across the galaxy. Marcus had been chosen not for his diplomatic skills or his academic achievements, but for something much more personal, his love of dance. Back on Earth, Marcus was known in his community as someone who could make anyone smile with his enthusiastic dancing. At 300 pounds and standing 6 feet tall, he didn't fit the typical image of a dancer, but his joy was infectious. Children would gather around when he performed at local festivals, their laughter filling the air as he spun and jumped with surprising lightness. His movements weren't technically perfect, but they came from a heart. Now, surrounded by beings who seemed to float rather than walk, Marcus wondered if he had made a terrible mistake accepting this assignment. Human Marcus Chun, a melodic voice called from behind him. He turned to see a tall, slender figure approaching. The being had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light, with elongated limbs that moved like water. This was Ambassador Zixtal, his assigned guide for the festival. "Welcome to Zephyria Prime," Zixtal said, their voice like wind chimes. "I trust your journey was comfortable." Marcus nodded, adjusting the strap of his bag. "Yes, thank you. This place is incredible." Zixtal's large, dark eyes studied Marcus with what might have been curiosity. "Indeed. Come, I will escort you to the cultural district where you will be staying. The opening ceremony begins tomorrow, and you will have the opportunity to present your species' contribution to our shared heritage." As they walked through the city, Marcus marveled at the architecture. Buildings seemed to grow from the ground like organic structures, their surfaces rippling with patterns of light. Beings of countless species moved along elevated walkways, some flying, others gliding, all with a grace that made Marcus feel clumsy. "Tell me," Zixtal said as they walked, "what exactly will you be presenting?" "Our records indicate that humans have various art forms: music, visual arts, literature. What aspect of your culture did you choose to share?" Marcus felt his cheeks warm. "Dance," he said simply. Zixtal stopped walking for a moment, their head tilting in a way that suggested confusion. "Dance? But surely you understand that movement arts are highly valued in our society. The competition will be quite sophisticated." "I know," Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "But dance is universal, isn't it? It's how we express joy, how we connect with each other without words." They resumed walking, but Marcus could sense Zixtal's doubt. As they entered the cultural district, Marcus saw practice spaces filled with beings rehearsing their performances. Through one transparent wall, he watched a group of insectoid creatures moving in perfect synchronization, their multiple arms creating intricate patterns in the air. Through another, crystalline beings seemed to refract light through their bodies as they moved, creating a living light show. Marcus's heart sank. How could his simple, earthbound movements compete with such ethereal beauty? "Here are your quarters," Zixtal announced, stopping before a curved doorway. "Rest well. Tomorrow will be enlightening." Alone in his room, Marcus sat heavily on the provided furniture, which adjusted automatically to accommodate his weight. He pulled out his portable music player and scrolled through the songs he had brought from Earth. Each one held memories: the salsa he had learned with his grandmother, the hip-hop routines he practiced with neighborhood kids, the folk dances he had discovered while traveling across his own planet. He stood and began to move, letting the familiar rhythms wash over him. Here, in private, his body remembered its joy. He swayed to a gentle ballad, then transitioned into an energetic swing dance, his feet finding the rhythm despite the alien floor beneath them. For a few minutes, he forgot about tomorrow's performance and simply existed in the music. A soft chime interrupted his practice. The room's communication system had activated, showing the image of a being Marcus didn't recognize. This creature had golden skin that seemed to emit its own light, with graceful features and eyes that held ancient wisdom. "Greetings, representative of Earth," the being said. "I am Chancellor Veltar, coordinator of the grand celebration. I wanted to personally welcome you to our festival and inform you that tomorrow's opening ceremony will be attended by beings from over 300 worlds, including members of the royal houses of the outer systems." Marcus swallowed hard. "Thank you for the welcome, Chancellor. I'm honored to be here. I have reviewed the preliminary descriptions of all cultural presentations," Veltar continued. "I must say, your choice to represent human artistic expression through physical movement is bold. I look forward to seeing what your species considers worthy of galactic attention." After the communication ended, Marcus felt the weight of expectation settling on his shoulders. He tried to practice again, but his movements felt forced and awkward. Every step seemed too heavy, every gesture too crude compared to what he had witnessed in the practice spaces. Sleep didn't come easily. Marcus lay in the alien bed, staring at the ceiling that displayed a slowly shifting pattern of stars. He thought about calling home, speaking to his family, but the time difference made it impractical. Instead, he closed his eyes and remembered why he had started dancing in the first place. He had been 8 years old, attending his cousin's wedding. The reception was in full swing, and everyone was dancing except Marcus, who sat at a table feeling too awkward and too young to join in. His grandmother had noticed him sitting alone and had walked over, extending her weathered hand. "Come, Mijo," she had said. "Let me show you something beautiful." She had led him to the dance floor and begun to move, not with the polished technique of the other dancers, but with pure joy. She laughed as she spun him around, her movements simple but filled with love. Other guests had joined them, and soon the formal dancing had transformed into something more organic, more real. "Dancing isn't about being perfect," his grandmother had whispered in his ear as they swayed together. "It's about sharing your heart with the world." The next morning, Marcus woke with new resolve. He spent time stretching and warming up, running through his planned routine. He had decided to tell a story through his dance, the story of humanity's relationship with Earth, from the first steps of early humans to the moment they reached for the stars. The opening ceremony was held in a vast amphitheater carved from living crystal. Thousands of beings filled the curved seats, their forms creating a tapestry of shapes and colors. At the center of the space, a performance area waited, its surface designed to enhance whatever art form was presented upon it. Marcus stood with the other cultural representatives in a preparation area behind the stage. Around him, beings made final adjustments to costumes that seemed to be made of captured starlight, or instruments that sang without being touched, or sculptures that moved on their own. "The human will perform first," announced an aide, consulting a tablet that glowed with alien script. Marcus's stomach dropped. Going first meant setting the tone for the entire ceremony. It also meant facing a cold audience that hadn't yet been warmed up by other performances. As he walked toward the performance area, Marcus heard whispers following him. He could understand most of the languages being spoken, but tone was universal. Some voices carried curiosity, others skepticism, and a few what sounded like amusement. The amphitheater fell silent as Marcus reached the center of the performance space. Thousands of alien eyes focused on him, and he felt more alone than he ever had in his life. The surface beneath his feet began to glow softly, responding to his presence. Marcus closed his eyes and thought of his grandmother. He thought of the children in his neighborhood who clapped when he danced in the park. He thought of every moment when movement had brought him closer to another person, regardless of language or background. The music began, not from his player, but from the amphitheater itself, which had somehow accessed and amplified his prepared soundtrack. The opening notes of a gentle earth melody filled the space, and Marcus began to move. He started slowly, his movements representing the first stirrings of life on a young planet. His body, heavy and grounded, became the earth itself, solid and nurturing. As the music built, his movements evolved, showing the growth of forests, the flow of rivers, the migration of animals. Then came the humans. Marcus's dancing became more complex, showing the development of civilization, the discovery of fire, the creation of art. His steps grew bolder, more intricate, but never lost their connection to the ground, to the earth that had birthed his species. The audience was silent, but Marcus was no longer thinking about them. He was lost in the story he was telling, his body becoming the vessel for humanity's entire journey. He showed their struggles and triumphs, their wars and their moments of peace, their constant drive to explore and understand. As the music reached its crescendo, Marcus's movements shifted to represent humanity's reach toward the stars. His jumps became higher, his spins faster, but still grounded in the weight of his earthbound form. He was showing that humans carried their home with them wherever they went, that their strength came not from transcending their physical nature, but from embracing it. The final notes of the music echoed through the amphitheater, and Marcus froze in his ending position, arms stretched toward the crystal ceiling, body planted firmly on the ground, face lifted to the stars, but feet remembering the soil. Silence. Marcus opened his eyes and saw thousands of alien faces staring at him. The quiet stretched on until he began to worry that he had somehow offended the entire galaxy. Then, slowly, a sound began to build. It wasn't applause as humans knew it. Some beings created harmonious tones. Others generated patterns of light. Still others produced rhythmic vibrations that Marcus felt in his bones. But whatever form it took, the response was clearly positive. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. Fascinating, came a voice from the royal viewing area. Marcus looked up to see a figure rising from a seat of honor. The being was clearly of high rank, draped in flowing garments that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Even from a distance, Marcus could see that this was someone important. The human has shown us something unexpected, the figure continued, their voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater. Movement that embraces weight rather than defying it. Art that celebrates limitation rather than transcending it. How refreshingly honest. Marcus bowed awkwardly, not sure of the proper protocol. As he straightened, he caught sight of movement in the royal section. Another figure was rising, and Marcus felt his breath catch. She was tall and graceful like most of the aliens he had met, but there was something different about her. Her skin had a subtle luminescence that shifted from silver to blue as she moved, and her features held a beauty that was both alien and somehow familiar. Most striking were her eyes, large and expressive, focused intently on Marcus. Princess Lyrian, whispered another representative nearby, daughter of the Outer Realm's most powerful royal house. The princess stepped forward to the edge of the royal viewing area. Her gaze never left Marcus as she spoke, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made the amphitheater's acoustics sing. "I find myself intrigued by this human's interpretation of movement," she said. "In our culture, dance is often seen as an escape from the physical realm, a way to transcend the limitations of matter. But this celebrates those limitations. It finds beauty in gravity, strength in weight, grace in groundedness." Marcus felt every eye in the amphitheater turn to him, then to the princess, then back to him. The political implications of a royal showing interest in a cultural representative were beyond his understanding, but he could feel the shift in the atmosphere around him. "Perhaps," Princess Lyrian continued, her eyes still locked on Marcus, "there is more to learn from this human perspective than we initially assumed." As other performances began, Marcus was led to a designated area for representatives who had completed their presentations. He tried to focus on the incredible displays of artistry that followed. Beings who painted with pure energy, others who sang in harmonies that seemed to alter the very structure of space around them. But he kept finding his attention drawn back to the royal viewing area. Princess Lyrian had returned to her seat, but occasionally Marcus caught her glancing in his direction. Each time their eyes met, she offered what might have been a smile, though it was difficult to tell with her alien features. The ceremony concluded with a collaborative piece involving representatives from 12 different worlds, each adding their unique artistic element to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Marcus watched in wonder as music, light, movement, and forms of expression he had no names for blended into a symphony of galactic creativity. As the audience began to disperse, Marcus gathered his belongings and prepared to return to his quarters. The other representatives nodded to him with what seemed like newfound respect, and several approached to offer congratulations on his performance. Human Marcus came a familiar melodic voice. He turned to see Ambassador Zixtal approaching, but their expression had changed dramatically from the skepticism of the day before. "Your presentation was unexpected," Zixtal said. "I confess I had doubts about the wisdom of sending a single human to represent your entire species' artistic heritage. Those doubts have been addressed." Marcus felt a warm glow of pride. "Thank you. I hope I represented Earth well." "Indeed you did. In fact, there have been several requests for private audiences with you from various cultural councils. It seems your approach to movement has sparked considerable interest in certain circles." As they walked back toward the cultural district, Marcus allowed himself to feel proud of what he had accomplished. He had taken his simple, earthbound dancing and somehow made it speak to beings from across the galaxy. His grandmother would have been proud. But as they reached his quarters, Zixtal paused at the entrance. "There is one more matter," the ambassador said, their tone shifting to something more formal. "You have received a personal invitation from the royal house of the Outer Realms. Princess Lyrian has requested a private meeting to discuss human movement arts in greater detail." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. A private meeting? With a princess? Tomorrow evening in the royal gardens. It is quite an honor, Marcus-chun. Such invitations are rarely extended to cultural representatives, particularly those from newly contacted species. After Zixtal left, Marcus stood alone in his quarters, trying to process what had happened. In the span of a single day, he had gone from being a nervous amateur worried about embarrassing his entire species to being personally invited to meet with galactic royalty. He looked at himself in the room's reflective surface, seeing the same heavy-set, slightly sweating human who had arrived on Zephyria Prime just yesterday. What could a princess possibly want to discuss with him about dance? As he prepared for bed, Marcus's mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps she was simply being polite, fulfilling some diplomatic obligation. Or maybe she was genuinely curious about human culture. The thought that she might be personally interested in him seemed too incredible to consider seriously. But as he drifted off to sleep, Marcus found himself thinking about the way Princess Lyrian had looked at him during his performance. There had been something in her eyes that went beyond polite interest or cultural curiosity. Something that made him wonder if tomorrow's meeting might change everything. Marcus spent the entire next day in a state of nervous anticipation. The cultural exchange program had arranged for him to attend several workshops and exhibitions, but he found it impossible to concentrate fully on the incredible displays of alien artistry around him. At a demonstration of crystalline harmonic resonance, where beings from the mineral worlds created music by vibrating their bodies at specific frequencies, Marcus's mind wandered to what he might say to Princess Lyrian. During a poetry reading where gaseous entities compose verses by changing the colors and patterns of their cloud-like forms, he practiced potential conversation topics in his head. "You seem distracted, human," observed HFY, a representative from the Reptilian Saurian Confederacy. They had struck up a friendship over meals, bonding over their shared status as representatives of species that others sometimes underestimated. "I have a meeting tonight," Marcus admitted, trying to sound casual, "with Princess Lyrian." HFY's scaled features shifted in what Marcus had learned with surprise. "The princess? That is significant. She is not known for casual social interactions. Her house controls trade routes through 7-star systems, and Her personal influence extends far beyond her official title. This information did nothing to calm Marcus's nerves. What should I expect? I mean, what's the proper protocol for meeting with royalty here? Be yourself, HFY advised. Authenticity is highly valued in the outer realms. Attempting to be something you're not would be seen as dishonest. And dishonesty is one of the gravest insults in their culture. As evening approached, Marcus changed into his best clothes, a simple black shirt, and pants that his sister had insisted made him look dignified. He had brought only practical clothing for the trip, never imagining he would need formal wear for meeting royalty. Ambassador Zixtal arrived to escort him to the royal gardens, their demeanor more formal than usual. I must remind you, Zixtal said as they walked, that this meeting, while informal in nature, has the potential for significant diplomatic implications. Princess Lyrian is not merely a cultural figure. She is a political force in her own right. What exactly does that mean? Marcus asked, feeling his anxiety spike. It means that her interest in you, whatever the reason, will be noted by observers throughout the galaxy. Your species' relationship with the Galactic Council could be influenced by how this interaction proceeds. Marcus stopped walking. Wait, are you saying that my having dinner with the princess could affect Earth's standing in galactic politics? Zixtal's expression was unreadable. I'm saying that nothing involving the royal houses is ever purely personal. But do not let this knowledge overwhelm you. Be honest, be respectful, and trust in the sincerity that made your performance so compelling. The royal gardens were unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. Plants from dozens of worlds created a landscape that seemed to shift and change as he looked at it. Trees with crystalline leaves chimed softly in the alien breeze, while flowering vines that glowed with bioluminescence traced patterns along walkways that seemed to be made of compressed starlight. Princess Lyrian was waiting beside a fountain that flowed upward instead of down, its water defying gravity in spiraling helixes that caught and refracted the light from the garden's many luminescent plants. She had changed from her formal ceremony attire into flowing robes that shifted color as she moved, cycling through shades of blue and silver that complemented her natural luminescence. Marcus Chun, she said, rising gracefully as he approached. Her voice held the same melodic quality he remembered, but it was warmer now, more personal. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Thank you for extending it, Your Highness, Marcus replied, attempting what he hoped was an appropriate bow. Though I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure why you wanted to meet with me. Princess Lyrian gestured for him to sit on a bench that materialized from the garden path at her gesture. Please call me Lyrian, and your honesty is refreshing. Most beings who seek audience with me come with elaborate agendas and carefully rehearsed presentations. She settled beside him, close enough that Marcus could see the subtle patterns of light that moved beneath her skin like a slow-moving aurora. I wanted to meet with you because your performance yesterday challenged something fundamental about how I view the universe. Marcus blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, I don't understand. It was just dancing. No, Lyrian said firmly. It was much more than that. Tell me, Marcus, in your culture, is physical beauty considered separate from artistic expression? Marcus thought about the question. Not exactly. I mean, we appreciate beautiful dancers, but we also value emotional expression, technical skill, creativity. Beauty is just one element. In most galactic cultures, Lyrian explained, artistic movement is seen as a way to transcend physical limitations. We prize the ability to overcome gravity, to move with impossible lightness, to appear almost ethereal. Your performance did the opposite. It celebrated your physical nature rather than trying to escape it. She stood and walked a few steps away, her own movements demonstrating the ethereal quality she described. Even her casual gestures seemed to flow like water, as if gravity had only a tenuous hold on her. I've been trained in movement arts since childhood, she continued. I can manipulate gravitational fields to achieve flights that appear as magic to less advanced species. I can alter my body's density to phase through solid objects while dancing. These abilities are considered the height of artistic achievement in my world. She turned back to face him, her luminous eyes intense. But watching you yesterday, I realized I had never seen movement that was so grounded in truth. Your art didn't try to be something other than what it was. It found beauty in weight, in limitation, in the honest expression of a being accepting and celebrating its nature. Marcus felt a flush of warmth at her words. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from someone with your abilities. May I ask you to show me? Lyrian said suddenly. Here in the gardens? I would like to understand how you find such grace in groundedness. Marcus looked around at the impossible beauty of the royal gardens, feeling suddenly self-conscious. I don't have any music, and this space is so elegant. I feel like I was disturbing something precious. Lyrian smiled, and the expression transformed her features completely. The formal, royal bearing fell away, revealing something warm and genuinely curious. The gardens respond to emotion and intent. If you dance with sincerity, they will provide whatever accompaniment your art requires. She stepped back to give him space, settling onto another bench that rose from the ground to accommodate her. Please, Marcus, I am not asking as a princess making a royal command. I am asking as someone who has spent her life studying movement and beauty, who saw something yesterday that she has never seen before. Marcus took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He thought about what had driven him to dance in the first place. Not the desire to impress or to achieve technical perfection, but the simple joy of movement, the way his body could express emotions that words couldn't capture. He began slowly, with simple steps that felt the weight of the alien ground beneath his feet. As he moved, he became aware of a subtle change in the garden around them. The crystalline leaves began to chime in rhythm with his movements, and the glowing flowers shifted their intensity to match his energy. Marcus let the environment become part of his dance, responding to its responses, creating a feedback loop between his earthbound movements and the magical beauty of the royal gardens. He showed Lyrian the story he had told at the ceremony, but this time it was more personal, more intimate. This time it included the story of a human who had traveled farther from home than any of his ancestors had ever imagined, carrying with him the weight and wonder of his world. When he finished, the garden gradually returned to its previous state, though the plants seemed to maintain a subtle synchronization that hadn't been there before. Lyrian was silent for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she spoke. In my culture, we have a concept called truth movement. The idea that the highest form of artistic expression comes when a being moves in complete harmony with their essential nature. What you just showed me, this is truth movement of a kind I have never encountered. She stood and approached him, her movements now consciously less ethereal, as if she was trying to feel the weight of her own body more fully. Marcus, I have a confession to make. My interest in you extends beyond the academic. Yesterday, when you danced, I felt something I had never experienced before. Watching you embrace your physical nature so completely, finding such beauty in groundedness, it made me question everything I've been taught about the superiority of transcendence. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. I'm saying that you have shown me a new way of seeing beauty, of understanding art, of experiencing movement. And I'm saying that I would like to learn more. She paused, her luminescence shifting to warmer tones. I'm also saying that I find myself personally drawn to you in a way that has nothing to do with diplomacy or cultural exchange. The honesty in her voice was unmistakable, and Marcus felt a surge of emotions he hadn't expected. Lyrian, you're incredible. Beautiful, intelligent, more graceful than anyone I've ever met. But we're from completely different worlds, literally. I don't understand how this could work. Neither do I, she admitted. But I know that what I felt watching you dance was real. The way you moved with such honest joy, such complete acceptance of yourself. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. She moved closer, close enough that Marcus could feel the subtle warmth that radiated from her luminescent skin. "May I touch you?" Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Lyrian reached out and placed her hand on his chest, her palm glowing slightly where it made contact with his shirt. Her touch was warm and electric, sending waves of sensation through his body. "Your heartbeat," she said wonderingly. "It's so strong, so steady. In my species, our cardiovascular systems are much more delicate, designed for our lighter physiology. This strength, it's beautiful." Marcus covered her hand with his, marveling at how her skin felt both familiar and completely alien. "Lyrian, there's something you should know about humans. We're not considered the most advanced species by most standards. We're still dealing with conflicts on our own planet, still learning to work together. I'm not royalty or a diplomat or anyone special. I'm just a guy who likes to dance." "Just a guy who likes to dance," she repeated, and Marcus could hear the smile in her voice. "Marcus, do you have any idea what you represent to someone like me? I was born into royalty. I have been surrounded by beings seeking favor, status, political advantage my entire life. Everyone I meet wants something from me based on my title or my family's power." She stepped back slightly, but kept her hand in contact with his chest. "You don't even fully understand what my title means. You're not trying to impress me with your accomplishments or win my favor for some grand design. You're just genuine. When you look at me, you see Lyrian, not Princess Lyrian, heir to the Outer Realm houses. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Marcus asked. "It's a wonderful thing," she said softly. "It's also terrifying." They stood in the glowing garden, hands touching, looking at each other across the vast differences of species and culture. Marcus was acutely aware of everything that should make this moment impossible. They had known each other for less than 2 days. They were from different species. They lived on worlds separated by unimaginable distances. But he was also aware of the connection he felt, the way her presence made him feel both grounded and capable of flight. "There's going to be another ceremony tomorrow night," Lyrian said eventually. "The Festival of Paired Arts, where representatives collaborate with local artists to create new works. Would you be willing to collaborate with me?" Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "You want to dance with me? But our styles are completely different. You're ethereal and graceful, and I'm grounded and honest," she finished. "Yes, our styles are different. That's exactly why I think we could create something extraordinary together. But what about the political implications? Your ambassador warned me that anything involving royal houses is never purely personal." Lyrian's expression grew more serious. "That's true. If we dance together publicly, it will be interpreted as significant by the political observers. Some will see it as a cultural bridge between our peoples. Others will view it as a dangerous precedent. There will be consequences either way." She moved closer again, her luminescence shifting to deeper, warmer colors. "But, Marcus, some things are worth the consequences. What I felt yesterday watching you dance, what I'm feeling now talking with you, this kind of connection is rare. If we let political considerations prevent us from exploring it, we may never know what we could have created together." Marcus thought about his grandmother's words about sharing your heart with the world. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from a local community center to the royal gardens of an alien world. He thought about the look in Lyrian's eyes, the sincerity in her voice, the warmth of her touch. "Okay," he said simply. "Let's dance." The smile that spread across Lyrian's features was brilliant enough to illuminate the garden around them. "Really? You'll do it?" "I'm terrified," Marcus admitted. "I have no idea how this will work or what it means for either of us. But yes, I want to try." Lyrian stepped forward and embraced him, her arms wrapping around his larger frame with surprising strength. Marcus felt the warmth of her luminescence against his skin, smelled something like ozone and starlight in her hair, and realized that he was falling for an alien princess whose touch felt like coming home. "We'll need to practice," she murmured against his shoulder. "My movement style will need to adapt to work with your grounded approach. It will require both of us to step outside our comfort zones." "I'm getting used to that," Marcus said, holding her close and marveling at how perfectly she seemed to fit against him despite their physiological differences. They spent the next few hours in the garden, experimenting with ways their different movement styles could complement each other. Lyrian discovered that by matching her ethereal grace to Marcus's grounded strength, she could create moments of stunning contrast. Marcus learned that his earthbound movements could serve as an anchor that made Lyrian's flights seem even more magical. As the garden's artificial night cycle deepened, they reluctantly agreed to part ways. Tomorrow would bring rehearsal time, and the evening would bring their first public performance together. "Marcus," Lyrian said as they walked toward the garden's exit, "there's something else you should know. The Festival of Paired Arts isn't just a cultural celebration. Traditionally, when a member of a royal house chooses to dance with someone, it's considered a declaration of serious intent." Marcus stopped walking. "What kind of serious intent?" "The kind that suggests the royal in question is considering long-term partnership," she said quietly. "I wanted you to understand the full implications of what we're doing." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet, metaphorically speaking. "Lyrian, are you saying that by dancing with me tomorrow, you're essentially announcing to the galaxy that you're interested in courting me?" "In a simplified sense, yes," she said, "though the actual implications are more complex. What I'm really announcing is that I believe you are worth the political complications that such a partnership would entail." They reached the edge of the garden, where Ambassador Zixtal waited to escort Marcus back to his quarters. The ambassador's expression suggested they had been briefed on the significance of the evening's meeting. "Marcus," Lyrian said, taking his hands in hers, "if you've changed your mind, if the implications are too much, I will understand. We can call tomorrow's collaboration a purely cultural exchange, nothing more." Marcus looked in her luminous eyes and saw hope, fear, and determination in equal measure. He thought about everything he was risking, everything she was risking, everything that could go wrong. Then he thought about how it felt when they danced together in the garden, how their different styles had created something neither could achieve alone. "No," he said firmly, "I haven't changed my mind. Let's show them what human and alien grace can create together." Lyrian's luminescence flared with joy, and she leaned up to kiss his cheek. The contact sent warmth spreading through his entire body. "Until tomorrow, then," she whispered. As Marcus walked back to his quarters with Ambassador Zixtal, his mind raced with everything that had happened. In less than 3 days, his life had transformed completely. He had gone from being a nervous cultural representative to being personally involved with one of the most powerful figures in the galaxy. The political ramifications of tomorrow's performance will be significant, Zixtal observed as they walked. "I know," Marcus replied, "but some things are worth the complications." "Indeed," the ambassador said, and Marcus detected what might have been approval in their tone. "Your species has a saying, I believe, 'Fortune favors the bold.'" "Something like that," Marcus agreed. Back in his quarters, Marcus tried to process everything that had happened. He opened a communication channel to Earth, knowing that his family would be asleep, but needing to share his news with someone. He recorded a message for his sister. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this, but I think I'm falling in love with an alien princess. And tomorrow we're going to dance together in front of the entire galaxy. Wish me luck." As he prepared for sleep, Marcus realized that tomorrow would change everything, not just for him, but potentially for human-alien relations throughout the galaxy. The weight of that responsibility should have terrified him. Instead, all he could think about was the way Lyrian's hand had felt in his, and the magic they had created together in the garden. The morning of the Festival of Paired Arts arrived with an urgent chiming at Marcus's quarters. He opened his eyes to find the communications system displaying multiple incoming messages, their priority levels indicating some form of crisis. The first message was from Chancellor Veltar. "Representative Chun, your collaboration with Princess Lyrian has generated considerable interest throughout the diplomatic community. Please report to the Cultural Center for briefing at your earliest convenience." The second was from Ambassador Zixtal. "Marcus, we need to talk. The implications of last night's meeting have exceeded all predictions. The third, marked with the highest priority encryption, was from Princess Lyrian herself. Marcus, there have been developments. Meet me in rehearsal space 7 as soon as possible. Trust no one else until we speak. Marcus dressed quickly, his stomach churning with anxiety. Whatever was happening, it was clearly more serious than he had anticipated. He found Ambassador Zixtal waiting outside his quarters, their usual calm demeanor replaced by visible tension. "We have a situation," Zixtal said without preamble as they began walking quickly toward the cultural center. "What kind of situation?" "The kind that involves 3 royal houses filing formal diplomatic protests, 2 trade guilds threatening economic sanctions, and the Galactic Council calling an emergency session to discuss unprecedented cultural interference in established political structures." Marcus stopped walking. "All because I agreed to dance with Lyrian? All because a princess of the Outer Realm houses publicly announced her intention to explore partnership with a representative of a newly contacted species," Zixtal corrected. "The political ramifications are staggering." They resumed walking, passing groups of beings who turned to stare at Marcus with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. Word of his connection to Princess Lyrian had clearly spread throughout the station. "What exactly are these other royal houses upset about?" Marcus asked. "Competition," Zixtal explained. "Princess Lyrian is not only incredibly influential in her own right, but she's also unwed and therefore represents a potential alliance opportunity for other powerful families. Several royal houses have been negotiating potential partnerships for cycles. So by showing interest in me, she's potentially disrupting major political arrangements." "Precisely. But that's not the worst of it." Zixtal's pace quickened further. "There are also those who see your relationship as evidence that humans are attempting to manipulate their way into galactic politics through seduction rather than merit." Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks. "That's not what this is about at all." "I believe you," Zixtal said. "But perception matters as much as reality in galactic politics. And the perception among some factions is that your species has engineered this situation to gain advantage." They reached the cultural center to find it surrounded by beings that Marcus now recognized as journalists and political observers. Hover cameras drifted through the air, and the electromagnetic spectrum buzzed with data transmissions in dozens of languages. "How did this become such a big story so quickly?" Marcus asked as they pushed through the crowd. "Royal romantic entanglements are always news," Zixtal replied. "But this is the first time in galactic history that a member of the Outer Realm houses has shown serious interest in someone from a newly contacted species. It's unprecedented." Inside the cultural center, Chancellor Veltar was waiting with an expression of barely controlled frustration. "Representative Chun," the Chancellor said formally, "we need to discuss the future of your participation in the festival." "What do you mean?" "I mean that your collaboration with Princess Lyrian has created a political crisis that threatens to overshadow the entire celebration of unity. Several delegations are considering withdrawing from the festival entirely." Marcus felt his heart sink. "Are you asking me to cancel the performance?" "I am asking you to consider the greater good," Veltar replied. "Your personal desires, however genuine, are now affecting the stability of interspecies relations throughout this sector of the galaxy." Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance to the cultural center. Princess Lyrian had arrived, and she was not alone. She was accompanied by what appeared to be a full diplomatic escort, including beings that Marcus recognized as high-ranking officials for various galactic organizations. "Chancellor," Lyrian said as she approached, her voice carrying the full authority of her royal bearing, "I believe we need to clarify a few misconceptions about the current situation." Her luminescence was brighter than Marcus had ever seen it, and there was steel in her voice that hadn't been there during their private moments in the garden. "Your Highness," Veltar replied with a careful bow, "I was just explaining to Representative Chun the complexities that your announced collaboration has created, and I am here to explain why those complexities are based on incorrect assumptions," Lyrian replied. She looked directly at Marcus, and he saw determination burning in her luminous eyes. "Marcus, are you willing to proceed with our planned performance?" "If you are," he said without hesitation. "But I need to understand what we're really dealing with." Lyrian nodded and gestured to one of her companions, a tall being with crystalline features that reflected light in complex patterns. "This is Ambassador Crystal Song, representative of the Inner Rim Coalition. Ambassador, please explain the actual political implications of tonight's performance." Crystal Song stepped forward, their voice creating harmonic overtones as they spoke. "The situation is indeed complex, but not in the way many observers believe. Princess Lyrian's house has been negotiating potential alliance partnerships for several cycles, as is normal for royal families. However, none of these negotiations had reached the stage of formal commitment. The princess therefore has the complete legal right to explore alternative arrangements," added another of Lyrian's companions, this one a gaseous entity whose form shifted colors as they spoke. "The objections being raised are based on assumption and political posturing, not legitimate grievance." Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "So we're not actually breaking any laws or treaties?" "No," Lyrian said firmly. "But, Marcus, there's something else you need to know. The real reason for the strong reaction isn't just political. It's cultural." She moved closer, ignoring the crowd of officials and journalists that surrounded them. "Many galactic cultures subscribe to the belief that cross-species relationships are inherently impossible due to biological and cultural incompatibilities. By pursuing a connection with you, I'm challenging one of the most fundamental assumptions of interspecies politics." "What assumption?" "That different species should interact politically and economically, but never intimately. That the barriers between us are too great for genuine personal connection." Her luminescence shifted to warmer tones. "What we discovered in the garden last night, Marcus, it terrifies them because it proves that assumption wrong." Chancellor Veltar stepped forward, their expression grave. "Your Highness, with respect, you are asking Representative Chun to participate in what amounts to a political revolution. If your performance tonight is successful, if you demonstrate genuine compatibility between your species, it will reshape how the entire galaxy thinks about interspecies relationships." "And if we fail?" Marcus asked. "If you fail," Veltar said quietly, "it will reinforce existing prejudices and potentially set back interspecies relations for generations. The pressure on both of you will be immense." Marcus looked around at the crowd of beings watching their every interaction. He thought about the implications of what they were being asked to do. Not just dance together, but prove to an entire galaxy that love could transcend the boundaries of species and culture. "Lyrian," he said, "this is so much bigger than either of us anticipated. Are you sure this is what you want?" She stepped close enough to take his hands. Her touch warmed despite the formal setting. "Marcus, last night in the garden, when we danced together, did it feel wrong to you? Did it feel like something that shouldn't exist?" "No," he said immediately. "It felt like the most natural thing in the world." "Then we have our answer." Her luminescence flared with determination. "I refuse to let fear and prejudice dictate how I live my life. What we have is real, and it deserves the chance to grow." Ambassador Crystal Song stepped forward again. "If I may suggest a compromise, tonight's performance could be presented as a cultural experiment rather than a personal declaration. This would reduce the political pressure while still allowing you to demonstrate the artistic possibilities of cross-species collaboration." Marcus felt Lyrian's hands tighten around his. "What do you think?" he asked her. "I think," she said carefully, "that it would be dishonest. Our connection isn't just cultural or artistic. Pretending otherwise would undermine the very authenticity that makes it meaningful." "But it would be safer," Zixtal pointed out. "Safety is overrated," Marcus said, surprising himself with his decisiveness. "Lyrian's right. If we're going to do this, we should do it honestly." Chancellor Veltar studied them both for a long moment. "Very well," they said finally, "but you should understand that tonight's performance will be broadcast throughout the galaxy. Billions of beings will be watching, and their reactions will shape interspecies policy for decades to come. No pressure, Marcus muttered, and was surprised when several of the aliens present made sounds that indicated they understood human humor. Actually, Lyrian said with a smile that lit up her features, I think the pressure might be exactly what we need. Some of the best art comes from impossible circumstances. The crowd around them began to disperse as arrangements were made for the evening's performance. Marcus found himself alone with Lyrian and her close advisors, finally, able to speak more freely. Are you really prepared for this? He asked her. I mean, everything you're risking for someone you've known for 3 days? Marcus, she said, moving close enough that her luminescence cast a warm glow on his skin. Do you believe in love at first sight? I don't know. I never thought about it much. Neither did I. In my culture, romantic partnerships are typically arranged based on political advantage and genetic compatibility. The idea of choosing a partner based on emotional connection is considered primitive and impractical. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. But when I watched you dance that first day, something changed inside me. It wasn't just attraction, though I am attracted to you. It was recognition. Like my soul recognized something in yours that it had been searching for. Marcus leaned into her touch, marveling at how her alien features had become so beautiful to him in such a short time. I feel it too. I can't explain it, but being with you feels like coming home. Then, that's all we need to know, she said firmly. Everything else, the politics, the cultural implications, the galaxy-wide attention, those are external pressures. What matters is what exists between us. One of her advisors, a being with features that reminded Marcus of a cross between a cat and a bird, approached respectfully. Your Highness, we should begin rehearsals. The performance space needs to be configured for your specific movement requirements. Lyrian nodded and turned to Marcus. Are you ready to show the galaxy what human and alien grace can create together? Marcus took a deep breath, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 3 days ago, he had been a nervous cultural representative worried about embarrassing his species. Now he was about to perform in front of billions of beings, in a dance that would either prove the possibility of interspecies love or reinforce the prejudices that kept different species apart. I'm ready, he said, and meant it. The rehearsal space was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. The floor could adjust its properties from solid to yielding, from smooth to textured. The walls could generate gravitational fields to support aerial movements, and the ceiling could project environments ranging from Earth's sky to the nebula clouds of distant star systems. This is incredible, Marcus said as he tested the responsive floor. You can dance in 3 dimensions here, which is exactly what I was hoping for, Lyrian replied. She had changed into a practice outfit that seemed to be made of liquid light, flowing and shifting as she moved. My natural movement style involves a lot of aerial work, but after our experiment in the garden, I want to try something different. They spent the first hour simply exploring the space, learning how their different movement vocabularies could interact. Marcus discovered that his grounded style could actually enhance Lyrian's flights by providing a strong foundation for her to spring from and return to. He made her aerial movements seem more dramatic rather than less. Lyrian, meanwhile, experimented with incorporating more weight and groundedness into her own movement. She found that by matching her ethereal grace with moments of deliberate weight and connection to the earth, she could create stunning contrasts that made both styles more powerful. This is working better than I hoped, she said during a brief break, her luminescence glowing with excitement. We're not just accommodating each other's styles. We're creating something entirely new. What should we call it? Marcus asked. Earth-alien fusion dance? Lyrian laughed, a sound like musical chimes. How about grounded grace? Movement that finds beauty in both weight and weightlessness, in limitation and transcendence. They continued rehearsing, building a routine that told the story of 2 beings from different worlds finding connection across impossible differences. Marcus's movements represented the weight of tradition, the strength of roots, the beauty of accepting one's nature. Lyrian's represented the possibility of transcendence, the dream of flight, the courage to reach beyond known boundaries. But as the routine developed, their individual styles began to blend and influence each other. Marcus found moments where Lyrian's support allowed him to achieve heights he never could have reached alone. Lyrian discovered that grounding herself in Marcus's strength gave her flights more meaning, more emotional weight. "We need music," Lyrian said as they worked through a particularly complex sequence where she spiraled around Marcus's solid form like wind around a mountain. "I brought some pieces from Earth," Marcus offered, "but I don't know if they'll work for your movement style. May I hear them?" Marcus activated his portable music player, starting with a piece that had always moved him, a composition that blended orchestral instruments with electronic elements, creating something that felt both ancient and futuristic. The moment the music began, the rehearsal space responded, its walls and ceiling shifting to complement the rhythm and melody. Lyrian closed her eyes and let the unfamiliar harmonies wash over her. "This is beautiful," she said. "It has weight, but also lightness, structure, but also freedom. It's perfect for what we're trying to create." They ran through their routine with the earth music, and Marcus was amazed at how perfectly Lyrian's alien grace complemented the human rhythms. Her movements found harmonies in the music that he had never noticed, while his groundedness gave the ethereal melodies a foundation they had been lacking. "This is it," he said as they finished the complete sequence. "This is what we're going to show them. Are you nervous?" Lyrian asked as they prepared to leave the rehearsal space. "Terrified," Marcus admitted, "but also excited. What we created in there, it's something special, isn't it?" "It's something revolutionary," she agreed. "Marcus, whatever happens tonight, I want you to know that these past few days have been the most meaningful of my life." "Mine too," he said, pulling her close despite the sweat and exhaustion of their rehearsal. "Whatever the galaxy thinks of us, what we have is real." They held each other in the empty rehearsal space, two beings from impossible different worlds who had found something universal in their connection. In a few hours, they would perform before billions of watching eyes, knowing that their dance would be judged not just as art, but as proof of whether love could truly transcend the boundaries of species and culture. "One more thing," Lyrian said as they prepared to part ways to rest before the evening's performance. "There will be beings in tonight's audience who want us to fail. They will be watching for any sign of incompatibility, any evidence that cross-species relationships are unnatural or impossible. How do we handle that?" "We dance with complete honesty," she said simply. "We show them not what they expect to see, but what actually exists between us. We trust in the truth of our connection." As Marcus returned to his quarters to prepare for the most important performance of his life, he thought about how much his understanding of dance had expanded in just a few days. What had started as a way to share human culture had become a language for expressing something much more profound, the possibility that love, understanding, and beauty could exist anywhere beings were willing to open their hearts to each other. Tonight, he and Lyrian would dance for the galaxy. But, more importantly, they would dance for each other, trusting that their truth would be powerful enough to change minds and hearts across the stars. The Festival of Paired Arts Amphitheater had been transformed for the evening's performances. Where before it had been an elegant venue for cultural appreciation, tonight it resembled the epicenter of galactic politics. Diplomatic observers filled specially designated sections, their recording devices capturing every moment for transmission across the galaxy. News correspondents from dozens of species provided live commentary in hundreds of languages. Marcus stood in the preparation area, watching through a crystal viewing panel as beings from across known space took their seats. He had never imagined that so many different forms of life existed. There were beings of pure energy contained in crystalline matrices, others who seemed to be made of living metal, and some whose forms shifted constantly as if they couldn't decide on a single shape. "Quite a crowd," observed HFY, who had come to offer moral support. I count representatives from at least 400 species, including some who rarely leave their home systems. Any idea how many are here hoping we succeed versus hoping we fail? Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice light. Based on the political briefings I've received, I'd estimate about 60% are genuinely curious, 30% are opposed to what you represent, and 10% are actively hoping for your relationship to succeed as a precedent for their own situations. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Their own situations? Cross-species attraction is more common than most beings admit, HFY explained. But it's rarely acted upon due to cultural taboos and political complications. If you and Princess Lyrian can demonstrate that such relationships are possible, you'll give hope to thousands of others. The weight of responsibility settled even more heavily on Marcus's shoulders. It was one thing to dance for his own happiness and Lyrian's. It was another to carry the romantic hopes of beings across the galaxy. Marcus! Lyrian's voice came from behind him, and he turned to see her approaching in her performance attire. She wore a gown that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself, dark material shot through with points of light that moved like living stars. Her natural luminescence had been enhanced with subtle applications of light-conducting filaments that traced elegant patterns across her skin. She was quite simply the most beautiful being Marcus had ever seen. "You look incredible," he managed to say, suddenly, very aware of his own simple black performance outfit. "As do you," she replied, and the sincerity in her voice made him believe her. "Are you ready for this?" "I keep telling myself that it's just dancing," Marcus said. "The same thing I've done at community centers and local festivals back home. Except tonight, our dancing might change the course of interspecies relations for generations," Lyrian added with a wry smile. "Yeah, except for that." They were interrupted by the arrival of Chancellor Veltar, whose expression had grown increasingly grave as the evening approached. "Your Highnesses," the Chancellor said, using the formal address that acknowledged Marcus's temporary diplomatic status. "The galactic audience is now estimated at over 12 billion beings. This will be one of the most watched cultural events in recorded history." "No pressure," Marcus muttered, echoing his comment from earlier in the day. "There is one more development you should be aware of," Veltar continued. "Emperor Zarthal of the Rigid Orthodoxy has sent a formal statement declaring that tonight's performance will be viewed as a test case for interspecies relationship policies throughout the Eastern Rim. If your collaboration is deemed successful, his empire will consider relaxing restrictions that have kept different species segregated for millennia." Lyrian's luminescence flared with surprise. "The Rigid Orthodoxy hasn't allowed cross-species contact of any kind for over 1,000 cycles. This could affect billions of beings." Conversely, Veltar added, if the performance is judged unsuccessful, it could be used as evidence to justify even stricter segregation policies. The political stakes could not be higher. Marcus felt his knees go weak. How exactly will success or failure be determined? By the reaction of the audience, Veltar replied simply, "If your performance generates positive responses from a broad cross-section of species, it will be considered a demonstration that cross-species collaboration can create beauty and meaning. If it generates confusion, discomfort, or rejection, we understand," Lyrian said firmly. "Chancellor, with respect, we need a few minutes alone before the performance begins." After Veltar left, Marcus and Lyrian stood together in the preparation area, watching the crowd continue to fill the amphitheater. The magnitude of what they were about to attempt seemed to grow with every passing moment. "Lyrian," Marcus said quietly, "what if I mess this up? What if my dancing isn't good enough to convince 12 billion beings that humans and aliens can create something beautiful together?" She turned to face him fully, her hands reaching up to frame his face. "Marcus, listen to me. 3 days ago, you stood on that same stage and moved 12,000 beings with your honesty and authenticity. You weren't trying to prove anything to anyone. You were just sharing your joy in movement. That was before I knew what was at stake. The stakes haven't changed who you are," she said firmly. You're still the same human who found beauty in weight and groundedness, who showed me that transcendence isn't about escaping your nature, but embracing it completely. She leaned closer, her luminescence warming the space between them. Tonight, we're not dancing for 12 billion observers. We're dancing for each other, and for the connection we've discovered. Everything else is just noise. Marcus looked into her luminous eyes and felt some of the tension leave his body. You're right. It's about us, about what we've found together. Exactly. And what we found is real, Marcus. It's powerful enough to change minds because it's genuine. A soft chime indicated that the performance was about to begin. Marcus and Lyrian made their way to the staging area at the edge of the performance space. Through the crystal barriers, Marcus could see the vast audience stretching up into the amphitheater's heights. Thousands of different forms of life united in their attention. Representative Marcus Chun and Princess Lyrian of the Outer Realm Houses announced the evening's coordinator, presenting an exploration of grounded grace, the intersection of earth movement traditions with Zephyrian aerial arts. The amphitheater fell silent as they walked onto the performance space. The stage had been configured with subtle gravitational variations that would allow Lyrian to achieve her aerial movements while providing Marcus with solid ground for his earthbound style. They took their positions at opposite ends of the space, Marcus grounded and solid, Lyrian poised as if ready to take flight. The music began, and with it their dance. Marcus started as he had in his first performance, with movements that spoke of earth, of weight, of the honest beauty of accepting one's limitations. But tonight, his dancing carried an additional element, longing. His movements reached toward Lyrian, showing a grounded being aspiring to touch something ethereal. Lyrian began in her element, soaring through the space with impossible grace, her form seeming to defy not just gravity, but the very concept of physical limitation. But as she danced, her movements began to show curiosity about the grounded figure below, an otherworldly being drawn to something solid and real. The first contact between their styles came when Lyrian descended from her flight to circle Marcus, her ethereal movements creating a spiral of light around his steady form. Where her luminescence touched him, Marcus seemed to gain lightness without losing his essential groundedness. The audience was completely silent, but Marcus could sense their attention like a physical presence. He focused on Lyrian, on the story they were telling together, on the truth of their connection. As the dance progressed, their individual styles began to merge more completely. Marcus discovered that Lyrian's support allowed him to achieve moments of genuine flight, not by abandoning his weight, but by using it as a foundation to spring into brief moments of weightlessness. When he returned to Earth, he did so with increased appreciation for both the solid ground and the memory of flight. Lyrian, meanwhile, found that grounding herself in Marcus's strength gave her aerial work new meaning. Her flights became more purposeful, more emotionally resonant, because she had a home to return to. Her ethereal nature wasn't diminished by contact with his earthbound reality. It was enhanced by it. The music swelled as they reached the climactic sequence of their routine. Marcus lifted Lyrian, not in the way a traditional dance partner might, but by creating a foundation of strength that allowed her to launch into her most spectacular aerial sequence. She spiraled upward, her form creating patterns of light that painted temporary constellations across the amphitheater's ceiling. But then, in a moment that they had discovered only in rehearsal, she began to descend not back to empty air, but toward Marcus. As she settled into his arms, her ethereal grace didn't disappear. Instead, it transformed into something new. Together, they moved with a combination of weight and weightlessness, of limitation and transcendence that neither could achieve alone. The final moment of the dance found them in an embrace that was simultaneously grounded and elevated, earthbound and celestial. Marcus's feet were planted firmly on the stage, but Lyrian's luminescence surrounded them both, creating the impression that they existed in a space between worlds. The music faded, and, for a long moment, the amphitheater was utterly silent. Then, slowly, the reaction began. It started with the beings closest to the stage. A soft harmonic humming from the crystalline entities, rhythmic light pulses from the energy-based species, gentle percussion from beings who communicated through vibration. But, unlike the varied expressions of approval Marcus had received after his first performance, tonight the response seemed to synchronize. Different species, each with their own ways of showing appreciation, began to find harmonies with each other. The result was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. A symphony of approval that transcended species boundaries, created by beings who had found common ground in witnessing the beauty of connection across difference. The response grew and spread throughout the amphitheater until the entire vast space resonated with unified appreciation. Marcus looked up at the thousands of diverse faces and forms, seeing expressions of wonder, joy, and something that looked like hope. "Listen," Lyrian whispered in his ear, her voice barely audible over the continuing ovation. "They're not just applauding our performance. They're celebrating the possibility we've shown them." Marcus could feel tears on his cheeks as he looked out at the galaxy's reaction to their love story. Beings who had never imagined cross-species relationships were possible were witnessing the beauty that could emerge from such connections. Chancellor Veltar appeared at the edge of the stage. Their expression transformed from the worry of earlier in the evening to something approaching awe. The response has been unanimous across species lines. They called over the continuing appreciation. The political observers are calling it the most successful cultural collaboration in galactic history. As the formal applause continued, Marcus and Lyrian remained in their final dance position, holding each other and marveling at what they had accomplished together. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked as the response finally began to fade. "Now," Lyrian said with a smile that lit up her features, "we figure out how to make this work long-term. Because Marcus Chun, after what we just shared with the galaxy, there's no going back to pretending this connection doesn't exist." Over the following days, the political ramifications of their performance began to unfold. The Emperor of the Rigid Orthodoxy announced a formal review of segregation policies. Several other major governments declared initiatives to study the possibilities of cross-species cultural exchange. Most significantly, the Galactic Council voted to establish new frameworks for recognizing and protecting cross-species relationships. Marcus found himself in the unprecedented position of being both a cultural representative and an accidental political figure. Marriage proposals arrived from beings across the galaxy who saw him as a symbol of possibility, while others offered him positions in their governments or cultural institutions. But, through all the political attention, what remained constant was his connection to Lyrian. "I've been thinking," she said one evening as they walked through the royal gardens where they had first danced together, "about how we make this work practically." "I've been thinking about that too," Marcus replied. "The distance between our worlds, the cultural differences, the political complications. All solvable," Lyrian said firmly. "Marcus, what would you say to splitting time between Earth and Zephyria Prime? 6 months in each location." Marcus stopped walking, surprised by the concrete nature of her proposal. "You'd be willing to spend 6 months a year on Earth? I'd be willing to spend the rest of my life learning about your world, your culture, your people," she said simply. "Just as I hope you'd be willing to learn about mine." Marcus looked at her in the garden's ethereal light, this alien princess who had changed his understanding of what was possible. "Lyrian, are you asking me to marry you?" "In my culture, that decision is typically made by families for political reasons," she said with a smile. "But I think I prefer the human approach of choosing for yourself based on love." She moved closer, her luminescence warming the space between them. "So yes, Marcus Chun, I am asking you to marry me. I'm asking you to join your life with mine, to help me build bridges between our peoples, and to continue creating beauty that shows the galaxy what's possible when beings choose connection over separation." Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. From a community center dancer worried about embarrassing his species, to standing in an alien garden being proposed to by a princess whose love had already changed galactic politics. Yes, he said simply. Yes to all of it. Their kiss was witnessed by the garden's bioluminescent plants, which responded to their emotions by blooming in patterns of light that had never been seen before. It was, both of them realized, a perfect metaphor for what their love represented, something new and beautiful created by the interaction of different forms of life. 6 months later, Marcus stood on a platform overlooking the main city of Zephyria Prime, watching the sunset paint the alien sky in colors that had no names in any human language. Beside him, Lyrian watched with equal fascination as Earth's moon rose over the horizon of Marcus's hometown, visible through the room's communication portal. They had been married in a ceremony that blended traditions from both their cultures, witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy. Their wedding dance had been performed simultaneously on both Earth and Zephyria Prime, creating a moment of connection that spanned star systems. "Any regrets?" Lyrian asked, moving to stand beside him at the viewing platform. Marcus considered the question seriously. His life had become more complex than he could have imagined. They split their time between two worlds, faced constant political scrutiny, and served as unofficial ambassadors for cross-species relationships throughout the galaxy. But as he looked at his wife, whose luminescence had become as familiar and beloved as sunlight, he knew his answer. "Only one," he said with a smile. "I regret that it took me 32 years to find you." Lyrian laughed, the sound carrying musical harmonies that had become one of Marcus's favorite sounds in any galaxy. "Well," she said, "we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." Together, they watched the lights of two different worlds, representatives of the beauty that could be created when beings chose love over fear, connection over separation, and the courage to dance together across the vastness of space. Below them, in the city's cultural district, other mixed-species couples walked hand in hand, their relationships made possible by the precedent Marcus and Lyrian had established. Their dance had become a symbol throughout the galaxy, proof that love could transcend any boundary when beings were brave enough to reach for each other across the impossible distances between worlds. Marcus had come to the festival as a simple dancer, hoping to share his culture. He was leaving as part of a partnership that had reshaped how an entire galaxy thought about the possibilities of connection between different forms of life. And at the heart of it all was the simple truth that had started everything. When two beings dance together with complete honesty and open hearts, they can create something beautiful enough to change the universe.